So this is a lower ground floor Victorian property. We've got dampness at the base of the wall that's visible, but you'll see that it carries on all the way up around the frame of the door. We also see that there are salts. It feels wet, and there are salts on the wall, and these are calcium sulphate salts. They're not hygroscopic. They come from building material. They're an ingredient in cement. This is using a simple damp meter that I recommend any homeowner uses. It uses radio waves, so it's non-destructive. You don't have pins. They're better than the pin version. It's a lot cheaper than a protimeter. Oh, you'll see that there's height of damp all the way up to the top of the door frame, indicating that a lot of the water is coming from below. It's also at the base of the wall. Obviously, gravity will pull the dampness down as well. These damp meters aren't calibrated. That's why they're so much cheaper than the protimeter damp meters that surveyors tend to use. There's also some dampness on the floor at the base of the wall and running where the central heating pipes are running.
Thermal imaging camera.
So here we see blue is cold, green is medium, orange, and then red and white are the warmest. At this time of year, you can't see that much. You can see perhaps where some vapor is coming off, cooling down. So I get them to put the heating on, and then that will show where the pipes are. So there are two things to know. You can get corrosion where copper pipes run through concrete floors, and there's a reaction between the concrete and the copper, and that can cause a leak, but it tends to be localized, perhaps spread across the floor, but it will tend to create brown dampness because you're getting as the water moves past the timber, it will create a brown stain. The other issue you have is condensation forming on the cold water pipe. When a radiator isn't in use, it will cause heat loss, and it's only marginal, but it can be that will be where the condensation will take place first. And so there's a risk of condensation. So I follow the pipes around. So in the cupboard behind, there's a lot of heat loss, and there's mold. There's a smell of mold in the cupboard. There's also signs of penetrating damp there, but what we're seeing is heat loss just above the area, above the door frame. And in fact, the wall is damp here. There was a dehumidifier here that used to leak at times, but it's maybe a year or so ago.
It's under the stairs and it smells of mould.
So the brown stains are from penetrating damp from water coming from above through the stairs. There's only so much you can do about that. I mean, obviously mastic helps. So we got a render crack on the outside. I also tested the water for a leak, and this is an important thing to do, but there was no leak. So there's some dampness to the front. Here we can see that there's an area where the penetrating damp can get in, but also I suspect that it was damp proof to the front. And so that's why you're not seeing the brown staining, which you would normally have. So obviously there's no ducting out, but you're using a dehumidifier, but it's when you're not using it as and when you're going away. So there's no ventilation in the kitchen. The dehumidifier is only 12 litres per day. It should be 20 litres a day and used constantly, in particular when going away. If you go away and leave the place unheated, but I would say in a lower ground floor property, you're wiser, you'll keep your costs down, by using a dehumidifier, because for two reasons. One is that you'll reduce the amount of damp down in the lower ground floor section, and secondly, you will humid air feels colder than dry air in winter, and therefore if you're keeping the humidity down, you're going to be using less energy up. Also, all the energy that's used in a dehumidifier comes out as heat, plus you get a 50% bonus, a little bit like an air source heat pump. As it's converting from gas to liquid, it releases energy, very much like a fridge. So if you're comfortable leaving a fridge on when you go away, you should feel equally comfortable leaving a dehumidifier. And I would have one that can drip out into a kitchen sink and just be set to 70% relative humidity and left on while you're away. And also while you're not there. And I would also keep an eye on the dew point. Always keep the dew point below the outside temperature. Dew point is the condensation temperature, and you, in any property, you're going to have somewhere where you get heat loss. In your case, you're getting it from the gas pipe, you'll get it from the cold water pipe, and that little area to the side which is unheated and gets lots of heat loss, and that will mean that some of the surfaces there are going to be at or close to the external temperature. So always keep the dew point below the external temperature. You can look it up on the Met Office website what the likely temperature is going to be, and you've got the monitors, and you just keep them below the 12, or in winter you'd be wanting to keep them, the internal dew point, below 10 degrees and probably more.